Morning, or is it good afternoon? Wherever you are, it's 5 o'clock somewhere. So I'm reporting now from what is called East Jerusalem. It's actually North Jerusalem. And in so many ways, we can say that this is occupied land. By who is the question. Beautiful park here for children and housing, water fountain. Overlook, a vantage point to look at the view on the boardwalk. The head dress and the dressing of the people around here showed these are clearly Muslim, whether Israeli Arabs, whether Palestinians, it could be either way. But this is showing what people call occupied. I'd like to talk about what occupation means. I'd like to talk about what that means. I'm not trying to be funny. By the way, in the distance there, it's clouds, but in the distance that is definitely what would be called today Palestinian, or what people are calling the West Bank. People don't even know what the West Bank of what. We can talk about that. Over here, those are Israeli citizens, whether they're Jewish or Arab or Christian or other is another question. And somewhere in between there is a great wall. Now today the problem is all lands that are occupied by someone who wasn't there before. I mean, that's just a reality. Anyone who is occupying land today is occupying land that wasn't occupied before. So who do we take it from? Who gave us the rights? Who didn't? Who do we take it from? Who had to be killed? Who had to be paid off? Who had to be forced? Everywhere in the world, we are in land that someone else lived there before. So I'm not going to talk about the fact that there might be some rare exceptions, that there might be pieces of land that have been passed down for 6 or 8 or 10,000 years. But if it hasn't been, then just the stark reality of the fact that if something is occupied now, then it means it was taken from or replaced someone else who was there before. I'm taking this video to show that there's a seamless line, that there is no line in Jerusalem between us and them. There's no line in Jerusalem between where we live, where they live, where there is safety or no safety. But one thing's for sure is that every single person who doesn't identify with radical Islam is potentially a target. The reason why there are these barricades here, these concrete blocks or steel blocks embedded into the concrete, is because it's a known thing that bus stops are where terrorists come to hit sitting ducks, and people waiting, civilians waiting to take the bus, are targets at every bus stop, which is why there have to be concrete pillars. There's no place in the world where it is safe for a person to identify as a Jew. There's no place in the world where it is safe for someone who is born by choice or otherwise identifies with Israel, that is safe. That's just a fact, a reality. If people don't like it, well, look up the facts, it's true. Many countries, especially in the Middle East and other places, have been completely ethically cleansed. 100%, if not 99% of Jews by murder or otherwise by force. As you can see at the bus stop here at the crossroads, there are Muslims, and I have no problem with that. I'm just showing that there is no apartheid here. There is no people being forced into occupation, into slavery. They drive freely, have all rights, almost all rights. They definitely don't have all obligations, but they have all rights, at least basic rights that most people don't have in most places in the world. There are no places in the world where Jews have freedom to live that aren't being threatened, especially today. Now, how do we get to that situation? Why is that a fact? It's a fact. The point is, there is no occupation anywhere without people being displaced. So anywhere where there's houses. The problem is there's lots of land. That's the point I'm trying to get at. The conflict causes the fact that land that isn't occupied, meaning green space, open space, which we need, but green space and open space isn't occupied enough and isn't taken care of enough. It's the borderlands and it's the buffer zones between humans and other humans they're laid to waste because of conflict. So then we create scarcity in the cities because we have to occupy each other and occupy spaces that aren't normal for people to live in, rather than sharing the abundance. If all this was not as a buffer zone, but were planted food forests, and if people were allowed to safely spread out and live, where they can have their own space and their own prosperity and their own, take care of their own dominion, and only need help, only need imposed help when they have to interact with other people, even the Middle East could be a much easier and better place. So this is the beginning of a whole new series. We had a series called All Lives Matter. We had a series called Urban Wild. We have a series now called Their Story, which is looking at history from the other point of view, their story. We're going to be looking at key points that have made and broken history in different times, meaning been pinnacle times of change, and see the way things looked from other points of view, the ones that weren't the mainstream ones that were told. What does that mean? Well, you'll find out soon. We're going to be doing a live podcast. We're going to be having a whole new channel. We're going to be getting into this now because there is no future if we don't deal with what's going on now. Half of the world, and when I say half, I don't mean an equal 50%, but half the world is struggling for financial power, for power through money and wealth, which represents only as much as you can actually use it to buy things or influence. The other half of the world, and again, not 50-50, is struggling over military and land power. But if you don't have what to do with that military and land power, if you don't have what to protect, then what's it worth? And 80% of the people, and again, it's just a number, but the vast majority of people in the world are just struggling to survive and don't want to be part of any conflict. But those struggling for power this way or that way have to manipulate the other players on the board in order to allow people at the top to stay in power. So I think that the balance of power is shifting, where most people in the world don't want and don't care and aren't interested in other people's power and being the excuses, the soldiers, the armies, or the victims of other people's power. I think most people in the world, and I would venture to say at least 80% of the people in the world, if given a chance to have a voice and given leaders to vote for or support, would be happy with the idea of just let them take care of themselves, given the chance and the freedom. What do I mean by that? There's enough land in the world that the right countries, for example, China, Russia, Australia, Canada, maybe India, maybe Saudi Arabia, if some of these countries were available in a program, a controlled program for migration by choice, where anybody in the world up to a certain number and through qualifications would be allowed to move regardless of history, politics, to serve certain roles in certain places. Enough land in the world between Canada, Russia, China, India, maybe Brazil, and in Africa, to reorganize the map where people who want to move and who have a constructive role to play in society and rebuilding a new world should be able to. People want to get out of a conflict zone, they should be allowed to, not use the human shields. And through all sorts of different programs that we've endorsed, we've promoted, we've taught, the Earth Guardians Algonquin, Earth Guardians International, and through other groups that we were representing at the time, we're willing to take this into a World Peace Initiative that we're pitching behind the scenes in the Abraham Accords and other negotiations to help bring world peace, through looking at the results and looking at what we can be on the other side, and not always looking at the worst case scenario and how much collateral damage is acceptable, because none is if it's not necessary. It is absolutely unnecessary to have the amount of collateral damage that there is. So showing the abundance and the freedom that there is, we're allowed just to enjoy it. I'm calling upon anyone and everyone to share this, to understand what we're talking about. And if you have questions, ask, because PCRMI, People's Committee for Responsible Management International and in Israel, has the plan that can allow everybody to have what they want. Everybody can have what they need and a lot of what they want without it costing anyone anything particular out of pocket, just by rearranging the existing resources, rebalancing existing resources, to cooperation and not forcing anyone anywhere, just by allowing real peace and real freedom, including through saving refugees and other people who are disadvantaged, who have no rights and no place to vote. There's a way to turn them into real forces for the good and not for the evil if given a chance. So we're calling upon everyone in the world. We're calling upon everyone in the world who cares about the future, doesn't want pain and destruction and murder and death to be something that's facing them on their doorstep. But obviously, we're not immortal. But just like Dr. Michael Greger teaches us how not to die if we eat a healthy, whole food, plant-based diet, we won't die from illness. That would be the net end result of this program, to create those kind of permaculture farm systems that would make that kind of food abundant to everyone. So yes, we could live how not to die. With infinite love and gratitude, we're calling upon everyone to at least listen and ask questions if you have any questions, because the future's in your hands. You just have to know how to use your hands to vote properly. And we're not talking about politics. We're talking about simply knowing what to ask for and how to ask for it. Infinite love and gratitude.